So everybody gets a round of applause on this show, and you get your own rotating little bug. So welcome, Mr. Ray Bugg. You've
Ironic, yes. There we go.
yes, you've come off mute as well. So, for those of you who are watching and don't know either myself or Ray, we have spent a long time working on conferences. So, cue a bit of VD of conferences at Dynamic Earth in Scotland, which is where we do the most of our work anyway. And up until just recently, nothing has been going on. So I thought I'd bring Ray on board to have a chat about all of that. So my last conference was just over, not quite 2.5 years ago, but it was the end of January, over 2 years ago. And instantaneously, within a couple of weeks, everything just fell off a cliff and there was nothing. So my first question, I never thought I'd use these exact words to you, Ray, but how was it for you?
Oh, this is going to be like therapy, Martin. To give you a bit of a backstory, I was fortunate enough to be visiting Indonesia in January 2020, and cases had just started emerging there. It was sweeping right to left as you look at the standard sort of global map. And when I got back to the UK early February, I sat down with the team and predicted that this was eventually going to reach our shores. We weren't locking down, we weren't stopping flights. We were very vulnerable to this, and we could see it was going to affect us. And where you could see Iran locking down, and then in February we could see Italy locking down, it was inevitable that the UK was going to be affected by it. So rather than waiting like a lot of the people did in the events industry to be told you can't have events, we're locking down, we had a contingency that allowed us to postpone one event, which was due to happen 2 days after we locked down. Not that we knew that at the time, but it allowed us to prepare to do our first virtual event in April, which is a long-standing event we've done for the oil and gas community called Digital Energy, which we managed to deliver on April the 28th. It all went very well, great content, but the tech didn't hold up very, very well that we used. We used a particular events platform that didn't perform. I won't mention their name because BFairs will get annoyed. We then made the decision to carry on doing virtual events. It didn't sort of put our nose out of joint or wet, or dampen our appetite to deliver them. But what we decided internally was, let's find a platform that we can manage, that we can take charge of. So we licensed another virtual platform called Six Connects, which was excellent, absolutely brilliant, not cheap, but over investment meant that we could deliver something a little bit special. And we managed to deliver 10 or 12 virtual summits over what was essentially an 18-month period. We did our last hybrid event on that platform in April. So for us, it was business as usual. It didn't affect us too much commercially. Customers were still looking for ways to market, to engage with customers. Our events are very transactional, so we picked a platform that could maintain that transactional opportunity for sponsors, things like gathering metrics of the virtual stand and visitors and what they've clicked on and stuff like that. So actually, for the marketers within our sponsorship companies, it created a whole new way of marketing for them, because they actually got more intelligence from a virtual event than they did from a physical event. You don't know who's picked up a leaflet. You don't know who's just nicked a stress ball or a chocolate out of your jar, or whatever the case may be at a physical event, unless you got eyes like a hawk. Our platform was sort of tracking all this process and then giving them very, very strong intelligence and insights at the end of it. But it's not real events as far as I'm concerned. And people in the virtual events industry are very purist about this. Transactional events, I don't think work online. Transactional events, I think, are much, much more effective in person for everybody concerned. So here we are now, May 2022, 19th of May in Aberdeen. We did our first fully 100% in-person event, over 200 attendees, everybody absolutely delighted. nobody dropping off the speaker list because of COVID, as they had done previously when we were doing hybrid at the end of 2021. And as far as I'm concerned, we're sort of heading back to this era of normality now. So it's good to be back in that respect.
Yeah, and I think, picking up a few things there as well. I was quite lucky. I just finished a conference, and I was only doing 2 a year. So right after the conference, what I was doing is looking around and deciding what I wanted to do next. And what people may not be aware of who are not conference organisers is that you probably shell out 75% of the money for a conference prior to it actually happening. And with the whole COVID thing and total uncertainty, it was right. I was so glad that I hadn't already started that process and then was fighting to get money back or something like that, or fighting my sponsors. So I got quite lucky from that perspective. But that probably brings me on to the next slide, which was what was good and what was bad during that period. And you'd mentioned one of the commercial things for the likes of you and I would be you have to go out there and spend a big chunk of money on the virtual event side of things. And I have been to some terrible virtual events, both as an attendee and as a exhibitor. And as an exhibitor, one in particular, where I had no idea who was watching my program. I had no idea who was in the sessions. There wasn't any metrics gathering, which the kind of thing that you're mentioning. And I think that was a lot of people just panicked and stuck stuff out there and then tried to charge the same sum of money. And interestingly enough, initially, all the money disappeared overnight. And then about 2 months later, I had people knocking on the door, realizing that they weren't spending on person-to-person events, and they've got this massive budget, and saying, what can I do with this budget? And it was kind of weird, because I was sitting there saying, well, I don't know. I've been to these virtual events and they've been garbage. So, but as you mentioned, I think it costs a fortune to get a good platform in place and to make it work. So
it's not just the platform. What was good for us was we delivered one event which we paid for as a single package with this events company. It didn't work. They had a lot of technical failures. A lot of the features that we'd been promised would be up live on the day weren't there. We couldn't test the environment before the events. We were really and this is a major player in the marketplace who'd overburdened themselves with this glut of customers wanting to use them because they're being forced into it. So they'd overcommitted themselves to the market. So that was bad. What was good was, I think, the loyalty of our customers, the trust of our customers, and the eagerness of our staff to embrace this whole new way of working. Nobody pushed back from it. There was no resistance. We invested a lot to make it good. And by making it good, we make it good for everybody, not just those people who are attending it, not just those people that are sponsoring it, but the staff who are building it as well. To give them one of the better products on the market. And to give you an idea, when you take into account your platform license, your webcasting costs, additional staff, because we actually needed to bring on additional staff to do this, because you're not just doing the event management side, you're also building all the things for exhibitors that they normally turn up and build themselves. So that was part of it as well. So we probably invested in the first year not something shy of about £100,000 to deliver 12 months worth of events on this particular platform. But for us, it paid dividends because we had incredibly good reports about the quality of the event. We had incredibly good reports about the usability of the events. We had incredibly good reports from sponsors about the level of interaction it had. Much less interaction than you have in person, but they had interaction. But also these amazing metrics which allowed them to be very personalised in the way they contacted delegates post-event as well. But also a lot more data. We shifted over our privacy policy from the standard opt-in to legitimate interests. So everybody attending a virtual event was agreeing to hand over their email details. So there was a much larger pool of data for sponsors to plug into as well. So that was good. What was bad was hugging people, shaking hands, going out for a beer afterwards, all those things. Relationships weren't so easy to maintain on Zoom as they are in person. But for us, it was good because we learned a lot from it. We learned a huge amount from it. And it brought us closer together as a team as well, because for us, it was a survival exercise, not just keeping the lights on, but it was surviving. We had to do something differently. We had to do it quick, and we had to do it properly. So lots of good, lots of bad, but a lot learned.
Well, I think from my perspective, the good elements, and we must stress there were some good ones, were that it was much easier to grab people for 20 minutes, half an hour from the other side of the world and get very high profile people to talk for you. Whereas
Yeah.
previously, I was paying to fly them to Edinburgh, and they would take at least 2 days out of their schedule to get to Edinburgh and get home again, and then pay hotel costs and expenses. So from a good perspective, that all disappeared, and I was able to get access to much higher level people, and I guess get to know those people who I'm hoping will then turn up at real events because they've been online doing an interview or something like that with me.
Yeah.
So, if there was one good thing that came out of that, it was the reach and the ability to get people's time at a very high level in a company for a small period of time where you wouldn't have got it before. It was going to be a huge commitment for them. So,
Yeah. I
exposure-wise,
agree.
it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we had to do, and I'm speaking on behalf of somebody else here who might disagree, but I think we had to do less work to get people onto virtual events. And I think right, because of that commitment to be on the platform for probably with the sort of intro testing, presentation and Q&A, probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. But significantly less than travel overnight and everything else. But at the same side, when we do approach speakers now, we say, it's in Edinburgh. They go, oh God, I love Edinburgh. Or, oh God, I've never visited Edinburgh before. I'd love to go to Edinburgh. So Edinburgh can be a very positive leverage for people to come and speak for you as well. I think if we were doing this, no disrespect to anywhere else, but if we were doing it, say, for example, in Hull, people might go, oh, no, actually, I'm busy that day. I don't fancy going to Hull. But, if they come to Scunthorpe or somewhere else, they'll probably say the same. Edinburgh's got a very strong pull for a lot of people. One, because they've either been here and loved it, or they've never been here before and have always wanted to be here. And an example of that is our next event. And I won't mention the speaker, but one of our speakers has decided to stay here for 4 days and turn it into a mini holiday. Not at our expense, I hasten to add, but their own. But they're sort of taking advantage of the fact they're in one of the most beautiful cities there is, and turning it into a holiday. And that was really the tipping balance between them coming and speaking for us and not. So yeah, I think it's easier when it's virtual, but it's not too bad when it's in person because we're very fortunate to be where we are.
Yeah, and I've had the same experience where people are come knocking on the door and said, I'm looking to visit family, but it'd be a great excuse if I can come to Edinburgh for a day or two and then go round the Highlands and then I'll go and see them. And,
Yeah.
That kind of works for a lot of people. And thank you to LinkedIn user who just said IT in the Park was the highlight of every year. And I do think person-to-person events are being more appreciated now than they ever were when there were millions of them going on and people had lots of choice. They're now saying, oh, I'm missing that. Where do I get my information? Where do I find out what's happening? How do I find out what my peer group are doing? And those facilities have not been there. It's much easier to get to know somebody and chat over a cup of coffee at lunchtime or a beer afterwards, and make connections that in the virtual world it's really, really difficult to do.
And the quality of DIGIT has gone up as well. People are coming to physical events now with motive. They're not coming to kick tires or because there's free food or whatever the case may be. People are coming with a motive. So we've actually found that even though numbers are I wouldn't say significantly less, but slightly less than they were pre-COVID, the outcomes and the satisfaction of our sponsors and exhibitors is probably far greater.
Let's talk about your next event. So this is another one. I mentioned it earlier. Barcode is on the screen, or QR code, I should say. If you want to know about Ray's next Cloud First event, get your phone out. You can do it right this moment and scan that barcode, and that's going to take you to the main page for the Cloud First event, where you can look up the agenda and the speakers. And
it works.
See, told you it'd work, Ray. So, technology. I did learn something in the last 2.5 years, you know. So,
yeah.
But that's a fair point. 2.5 years ago, I could never have done anything that we're doing right at this second in terms of an interactive, totally different look and feel live on LinkedIn. We can do that now. That's great. But in person would be better. Tell us where Cloud First came from and what it's all about.
Well, Cloud First is a re-emergence of an event we launched in 2014. So 2014, we did an event called Scott Cloud, imaginatively named. And that was held at the University of Edinburgh, up at the Craig Lockhart campus in the Egg, the big dome bit on the front. That was the main lecture theatre. We had that as our auditorium. We had a lovely room for exhibition. It was a beautiful day, too good actually. We like rain on conference days, keeps people in the building. But it was a beautiful day, and over 200 people there, 12 to 15 exhibitors, commercially very strong. And it was really at the time when businesses were starting to sort of look at a hybrid way of working, not a fully cloud first way of working, but certainly a hybrid way of working. And that event went on for 4 years, but then the whole notion of cloud became very, very sort of, people took cloud for granted, and rightfully so. You should take technology for granted. That's when it works. So we put that to bed and were sort of embedding the cloud discussion into other events that we had. But obviously with COVID, the shift from on-prem to off-prem was like the gold rush of 1847. And a lot of companies very, very quickly realized that you needed to be off-prem. You couldn't have staff checking servers were operational, etc. You were very much relying on everything as a service. So it was reborn last year. Last year, I think we had something like 450 people attending live online. So it was an incredibly successful event. Commercially, it was a very good event as well for us. We're still seeing businesses trying to work out what cloud can do for them. And it's all very well having various software components and infrastructure components of a cloud infrastructure. The interoperability of that, the consumption levels, how it's serviced internally, the new skill sets that are required within an organization as well, that's ever changing. And is very much, top of a lot of the IT and C-level discussions at the moment, is the journey to cloud first working. So for us, I think it's one of those events that's going to be in play for quite some time to come. We've already got somewhere in the region, I think about 220, 230 registered with 3 weeks to go. So it's going to be a big event, and very good commercial support as well, and some amazing speakers. It's not every day you're picking up one of the heads of engineering from Apple, or one of the senior cloud figures from Google, amongst others. It's a great lineup across the board, but certainly there's sort of two names that sort of jump out at you that these are heavyweight cloud consumers, and they come along and this is why we like what we do, is because our events, the core narrative, the context, and the speakers of our events is about the end user. The sharing of stories, experience across peer groups, and to have somebody from a company like Apple, which is probably far ahead in the way that it's consuming cloud in comparison to other parts of industry, they're very much sort of showing the barometer for how it should be done. I know that Cheryl from Apple is coming in and talking about how cloud native has evolved, the challenges of cloud native transformation, how you're getting from that hybrid on-prem environment to cloud first seamlessly, because you can't stop. It's not like a car breaks down. Okay, the car's broken down. Let's get under the hood. Let's fix it and let's see if it runs again. You've got to keep all the infrastructure and everything going. So how do you seamlessly transition all that? FinOps are coming in to speak for us as well. The financial management of cloud. One of the big challenges with cloud consumption at the minute is how much we're actually consuming of this stuff. It's pay as you go. Sometimes these things can run away with you. And there's some very good tools out there. I know CloudSoft, for example, have got a great dashboard now that sort of shows your entire cloud consumption on one dashboard. So you can see exactly what you're consuming, the spend levels exactly, and the resource levels. So it's a day where we are going to be talking everything cloud, probably less about the technology and probably more about the people, the process and the culture of cloud adoption. The technology comes after you work out those three main components. And I think people at the minute really want to talk about how they shift internally as part of their transformation before they start pinning the product on the end.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and it kind of ties in with the whole what is termed shadow IT as well, which is because all these cloud products and services are so easy to buy into. What's happening is that the IT department gets bypassed, but they're getting consumed elsewhere in the organisation. And, this is the IT department kicking back and saying, we should have a bit of control, or at least know what you're spending, or because the next thing is you purchase something and you come and ask us for support. We didn't even know you're using the damn thing. There's
the vulnerabilities attached to that as well. If you're purchasing, I mean, there's ways when you can shore it up to prevent it. So if anybody's on the VPN or on the work network, then they shouldn't be able to purchase any cloud services, and there's ways and means to do that. But I think it's also, if you're plugging that shadow cloud product, that app, into the existing infrastructure, the vulnerability that might bring. So I think there's a security risk with shadow IT, which needs to be addressed and looked at.
But it's a great looking lineup, so I'd encourage anybody to go. I was going to be doing some live streaming like this from the show, and I got all excited about it, and I was busy telling my better half how I was going to be live streaming from events and doing some interviews. It was going to be brilliant. Then she pointed out I'm in Mallorca. So, sorry, Ray, I'm in Mallorca. You're in Edinburgh. I'm hoping for sun. You're hoping for rain. That's the way it goes, I suppose.
And it would have been great to have you there, but I know where I'd rather be.
So, thanks to the person who said IT in the Park was the highlight of the year. And I've been asked a lot whether IT in the Park and indeed Nowbox, which are the two events I did, are coming back. Maybe. We will see. Leave me and Ray to have a chat about that, maybe, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, get down to Cloud First. And also, Ray, quick opportunity to name drop the large event that's going on at the end of the year for you.
Yes, DIGIT.FYI. DIGIT.FYI is everything IT and digital. It's cloud, it's cyber, it's AI, it's data, it's infrastructure, it's DevOps, it's everything. Anything that is of interest to IT and digital people, it's hosted under that roof, and there's a main stage for 500 people. There's lots of different other stages around, and we have 1,000, 1,200 people there in 2019. These are the sort of two most recent ones, obviously, which were obviously affected by COVID. 2019, we had 1,700 people there. We're hoping for very healthy numbers this year. It's a bit of everything. And it's a great opportunity to meet future employers, because a lot of the big employers will come and exhibit as well, who've got lots of jobs. Sainsbury's were there, Sainsbury's Bank were there in 2021, looking for IT staff. But it's mainly products and services, but also a great array of speakers and themes across the day as well. And it's a good fun day out.
And it's, again, Central Edinburgh, EICC again?
EICC, 10th of November.
Okay, so yeah, we love Dynamic Earth, but its capacity is about 300 people. So EICC times 4, times 5 even. something along those lines anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So that should be really good. And I normally close with this question, which I started with anyway. Ray, what was your first computer?
A ZX Spectrum.
ZX Spectrum. Right.
ZX Spectrum.
So
It was the 16K version, but I very quickly realised that I needed the 32K RAM pack to shove on the back of it, which if you dropped a hair onto it, it would crash. So I didn't get the 48K one that I wanted, got the 16K, but eventually got the 32K RAM pack. I did used to play around on a ZX81 before that, but that was a friend's. So yes, it's ZX Spectrum. Jetpack Willie.
I think we're going to have to start making a league table of these because we've already had a couple of ZX Spectrums and I'm ZX81 it was for me, but very quickly upgraded. I did find an embarrassing picture of me at Christmas opening, I think maybe a Commodore 64 and getting
Wow.
super excited about it.
Yeah.
But
The Amstrad was a good computer in that day as well. The Amstrad was a really, really fast computer in those days. Well, certainly for gaming, it was really, really good.
yeah,
So there was a lot to be said for Amstrad back in the 80s.
yeah. Well, not so much now.
Not so much
tell Alan.
now.
Don't tell Alan.
You're fine.
So thanks for joining me today, Ray. Hang out in the green room and we'll have a quick chat later. I'm just going to let people know what's going to go on next week and give you your little outro. So thanks for Ray for joining us. I'll have a quick chat with him in the green room. Here's the barcode again. If you want to get to my profile, if you're not already linked to me, scan that barcode now. You'll also be able to see past shows and what's coming up next. So do that. Next time round, very, very different conversation, and most of them are different conversations. I'm going to be talking to Miko from Data Content Manager about optimizing your configuration management database. It's a sort of generic discussion and one about ServiceNow as well, but very, very interesting content for people who are in the IT service management world. Certainly something that I would recommend you tune into. That same time, same place next week. So see you later. Goodbye. Cheerio. Bye for now. Thanks for joining.
That is so slick.